Vikings, 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 Vikings. Interesting fact here, they never actually had those pointed helmets. Yeah, there's no evidence of that at all. So, what are they really known for? Well, the Vikings are often remembered as sailors, invaders, warriors, traders, explorers, everything pretty much. Stories of them seem to strike fear into the hearts of those who opposed them. Some say they were a very scary bunch. Now, let's imagine what kind of stories it would take to scare them. Some Vikings weren't scared of war, of raging seas, of not knowing if they'll ever make it home again. Some weren't even scared of death itself. But these stories, well, these stories did the trick. Here are 10 of the very best. Let's see how you guys handle them. My name is Danny Burke and this is the top 10 Scary Viking Stories. Right before we get into that, I want to talk about Vikings War of Clans. This game was inspired by the top PC strategy and RPG games of the 90s. It reminds me a lot of an old Age of Empires. I love that game. So much of my childhood spent on that. It's all about building up resources, influence and experience to crush your opponent. You can also forge alliances with any of the 20 million online players. These clans can be the difference between glory and ruin. Play the game your own way and be prepared for it to constantly evolve as you fight over resources and compete in regular live events. Support Most Amazing Top 10 by downloading Vikings for free, only from the links in the description box below, and get the special bonus of 200 gold coins and a protective shield. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the DRAUGR. To the Vikings, these creatures were the walking dead. They are mentioned throughout Viking and Icelandic mythology. It's easy to compare them to our concept of zombies, but I think they were more terrifying than that. Although dead, the DRAUGR retained some level of intelligence. They weren't just undead, they were sentient. The Vikings believed they were created by a curse, or sometimes just the will of the dead person who simply refused to die. They called the tombs and graves of the dead their homes, especially ones with lots of treasure inside. Vikings who dared to plunder this treasure would be wary of the DRAUGR, who jealously guarded it. If a Viking decided to try and fight one of them for the treasure, they'd have to deal with their superhuman strength, their ability to just increase size at will, and the overpowering stench of decay. Some of you may have fought your fair share of these in Skyrim, but would you like to face one in real life? I'll leave that with you. Moving on to number 9 now, we have ODIN'S Eye. If you're a big fan of Norse mythology or the Marvel Universe, you may be aware of Odin, the Allfather, the supreme deity. You'll also be aware that he famously has only one eye. The other socket, where there used to be an eye, is covered up with an eye patch. Odin is known to represent both war and poetry. He's a leader, but also a hermit, a trickster and a protector. Most of the stories surrounding him are to do with wisdom, even the one about how he lost his eye. According to legend, Odin visited the mystical well of Urd at the base of the world tree that held the cosmos together. The well was guarded by Mimir, who became all-knowing by drinking the water in the well. Odin asked for a drink of the water. Mimir replied that in order to do that, he must sacrifice one of his eyes. Odin obliged. He gouged out one of his own eyes and dropped it into the well. Then, and only then, was he allowed to drink from the waters of cosmic knowledge. A gruesome way to gain wisdom. Next up at number 8 now, we have SPAEcraft. This was the Vikings version of black magic. It was practiced by witches known as Seither, also known as SPAE wives. They were formidable black magicians who were said to live with trolls and all sorts of other dark creatures that lived in the shadows. Their magic could take many forms and would sometimes be too subtle for the Vikings to even notice until it was far too late. The spells could cause crop failure, disease in livestock, wasting illnesses and plague that reduced the Vikings to just walking skeletons. The most powerful of the Seither could cut down some of the great Viking heroes with spells as powerful as they were evil. They could change their own skin, conjure up trolls out of nowhere, call forth the undead, and ensnare the minds of the Vikings to do their bidding. The Vikings lived in constant fear of when a SPAEcraft spell might come to town. Next up at number 7 now, we have the Burning. This is the story of Ingjald, a legendary Swedish king. He was a hardy and fearsome leader, but he wasn't always that way. As a child, he was made to eat the heart of a wolf in an attempt to harden him and prepare him to be king. Well, it certainly did that, but it changed him forever. Ingjald became terribly cruel from that day on. He knew his evil deeds would be the end of him one day and decided to stay one step ahead ahead of his rivals. He built a great feasting hall and invited 7 other kings to dine with him. During the meal, he went outside, locked the doors, and burned the hall to the ground. He waited with his men outside to cut down any survivors. He tried to cover this whole thing up, but the legend never forgot. He became known as Bad Ruler from then on. Eventually, he was overthrown and decided to not surrender, instead burning the building he was in to the ground. A fitting end for this cruel king. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the Kraken. This is a beast so terrible that it has survived into the modern era through stories passed down for generations. The Vikings believed the Kraken to be a giant squid or octopus-like creature. Its size was unimaginable, but some estimate it to be more than a mile long. Some Viking sailors actually mistook it for an island in the sea until they got really close and it reared its fearsome face. It rose up when the waters were disturbed by boats and would release its tentacles to flail above the water, smashing boats into splinters or pulling down sailors to their watery graves. Next up at number 5 now, we have Love Triangle of Death. This story comes from a 13th century saga said to be about real events from the Viking era a few hundred years before. Gudrun was a woman who was married twice but divorced and widowed, all at an early age. She fell in love with the charming Kjartan. Before they began courting though, Kjartan's father believed that Gudrun was very unlucky and didn't want his son marrying her. In an effort to stop their relationship in its tracks, he sent Kjartan on a trading expedition to Norway. There, he was held hostage by the king. During his absence, Kjartan's cousin Bolli persuaded the reluctant Gudrun to marry him instead. When Kjartan returned, Gudrun realized she had made a terrible mistake. A bloodbath ensued. In the end, Bolli killed Kjartan, his own cousin and also foster brother. Kjartan died in his arms. Bolli was then killed in revenge. The tale that began with such promising love ended in nothing but death and pools of blood. Next up, number 4 now, we have Fenrir. The Vikings believed this was one of Loki's children. He is also a gigantic wolf and very angry. Even the name struck fear into the hearts of those who heard of him. In the old days, the prophecies foretold that Fenrir would only ever continue to grow in size and ferocity, and so the gods decided they had to bind him forever. They tried chains, but Fenrir broke them off with ease. The gods commissioned the dwarves to make Gleipnir, a tether as thin as a ribbon but stronger than a chain. They restrained him with that. When he realized he had been tricked, he bit the hand off the god Tyr. The Vikings believe that Fenrir won't stay bound forever and that he will one day return and kill Odin himself at the end of the world. And now we're going to talk about the beginning of the world. Moving on to number 3, we have murder creation. We talked about Odin earlier on. If you were wondering what else a god who gouged his own eyes out can do, look no further. The Vikings believed that the universe came forth from an empty void that separated worlds made purely of fire and ice. This was the home of Ymir. This all-powerful being was the mother and father of the Jotuns, chaotic beings who later became the enemies of the Norse gods. Eventually came 3 siblings, Vili, Vi, and Odin. The 3 conspired to create the world that we live in and fill it with life. They needed something to create the world out of though, and they chose Ymir's body. Odin and his brothers murdered Ymir and made the world out of his body and the sky out of his skull. His blood became the sea, his bones and teeth became rocks and mountains, his brains became the clouds. The brothers then set about creating life, humans, and the intelligence that we have. For the Vikings, the world looks a lot different when you realize it was created through a horrific murder. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the end. The end. Perhaps I should have put this one at the very end. Anyway, this is a story of Ragnarok. I'm sure some of you have heard of it before. It's the event set in stone where the world as we know it will come to a fiery end. The Vikings believed that even the gods would be unable to escape the flames. They described this time as an axe age, a sword age, a wind age, a wolf age before the world falls. They said that after 3 years of global suffering and plague, there would be a war in the heaven above. The Viking gods would do battle with the Jotuns, giant wolves, the world serpent, and the infamous Loki. They would all fall, and the fire giant Surt would burn the whole world to ashes. Perhaps most disturbingly is the fact that even though the Vikings have gone, this prophecy still remains. Some people today still believe these horrors await us. And finally, finally, number 1 now, we have the sacrifice. This is the story of Domaldi, a legendary Swedish king. His tale is not a happy one. He became king when his 2 older half-brothers murdered their father Vispur, and his stepmother cursed Domaldi with a life of bad luck. So, not a great start to being a king. It would have been easy to dismiss the curse as the words of a grieving person who wanted to lash out in the only way they knew how. After a while though, it seemed like the curse had some power to it. Domaldi's reign was plagued by, well, plague. After the first year of his people starving, the chieftains tried to appease the gods by sacrificing an ox. The harvest was still bad, the people were still starving. The following year, they began sacrificing humans. That didn't work either. Eventually, they realized the curse was linked to Domaldi, and so they killed their own king on an altar. The moment the blood touched the stone, the curse was lifted. The next harvest was abundant, and people spoke in whispers of the sacrifices that had to be made. And that is that. I could honestly sit here and talk about Vikings all day, but it's time for a little break, I think, unless I've already made a part 2 when you're watching this, in which case go and watch that. Enjoy. Thanks again to Vikings War of Clans for supporting us. Links in the description box. Thank you as always for watching, guys. My name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next video.